I was 78 years old when I learned that love, apparently, has an expiration date. The nurse at the front desk didn't look up when she slid the clipboard across the counter. "Sign here, Mrs. Miller. Your daughter already handled the paperwork." My hand shook as I held the pen. Not from age. From the cold realization settling in my chest like a stone. Lauren had brought me here 3 days ago, promising it was temporary, just until we sorted out the medication costs. But the way she'd avoided my eyes when she left, the way she'd kissed my forehead like you'd pat a dog you were dropping at the pound, I knew. I'd always known, somewhere deep down. I just hadn't wanted to believe it. "Where do I sign?" I whispered. The nurse finally glanced up, and for a split second, I saw pity flash across her face. Then it was gone, replaced by professional indifference. Bottom of page 3. "Your daughter mentioned you might be confused, so don't worry. Everything's taken care of." Confused. That word again. Lauren had been using it a lot lately, especially after I'd asked her about the power of attorney I'd signed in the hospital. "Mom, you're just confused," she'd said, smoothing down her white coat like she was smoothing away my concerns. "This is what's best for you." But I wasn't confused. My heart was failing, yes. My body was giving up on me, piece by piece. But my mind was sharp enough to know that something was very, very wrong. If this story made you stop scrolling, imagine what tomorrow's will do. This channel is brand new, and we're bringing you real stories like this every single day. Stories about hidden kindness, unexpected redemptions, and the truth that lives beneath the surface. Hit that subscribe button, because some voices deserve to be heard, and some stories need witnesses. 15 years. That's how long I'd worked double shifts at the restaurant, my feet swelling in cheap shoes, my back screaming every night when I finally collapsed into bed. 15 years of saving every peso, cutting every corner, eating rice and beans while my daughter ate balanced meals because she needed proper nutrition for medical school. 1.7 million pesos. That's what it cost to turn my Lauren into doctor. Lauren Miller, the successful cardiologist with the pristine office in Polanco, and the handsome husband who looked at me like I was a stain on their expensive furniture. I'd been so proud, so stupidly, blindly proud. The nursing home, I refused to call it a care facility like Lauren did, smelled like disinfectant trying to mask something older and sadder underneath. My room was small, painted that particular shade of beige that exists nowhere in nature, with a window that looked out onto a concrete wall. There was a bed, a chair, a small table. No photographs. Lauren had promised to bring some later. That was 6 weeks ago. I sat on the edge of the bed that first afternoon, my hands folded in my lap, trying to understand how I'd gotten here. The house in Coyoacan, my house where I'd raised Lauren, where her father had planted the lemon tree before the cancer took him, was being prepared for sale, Lauren had explained. "You don't need that big space anymore, Mom, and the money will help cover your care. My care. 10,000 pesos a month for the heart medication that kept me alive." I'd asked Lauren for 500 to start, just to cover the first prescription while I figured things out. She'd looked at me like I'd asked her to cut off her own hand. "Mom, I have expenses. David and I are planning to expand the clinic. The kids need private school tuition. I can't just..." She'd stopped, pressed her lips together. "This is better. You'll be taken care of here, and the house sale will handle everything. Everything except my consent, apparently." The first week blurred together in a haze of routine. Breakfast at 7, pills at 8, physical therapy at 10, though therapy seemed generous for being walked slowly around a courtyard while a bored aide scrolled through her phone. Lunch, more pills, a nap I didn't want to take but took anyway, because what else was there to do? Dinner, television in the common room, where 3 other residents stared at a telenovela with dead eyes. I didn't cry. I was too angry to cry and too exhausted to maintain the anger. So I just existed, a ghost in a beige room, waiting for something I couldn't name. On day 8, I met Robert. He was sitting in the courtyard, a thin man with sharp cheekbones and eyes that had seen too much, reading a battered legal textbook. When I shuffled past with my aide, he glanced up, and something in his gaze stopped me. Recognition, maybe. Not of me specifically, but of the particular kind of defeat I was carrying. "Lawyer?" I asked, nodding at the book. "Was?" His voice was rough, like he didn't use it much. "Long time ago." The aide tugged my arm gently. "Come on, Mrs. Miller. We need to finish the lap." But Robert was already standing, tucking the book under his arm. Mind if I walk with you? These kids go too fast. Old bones need old company. The aide looked uncertain, then shrugged. 3 of us made it around the courtyard at a pace that didn't feel like punishment. Robert didn't talk much, but when he did, his words had weight. They got you with a power of attorney? He asked on our second lap. I stumbled. The aide caught my elbow, but Robert was the one who'd caught the truth. My daughter. She's a doctor. She said I needed someone to make decisions while I was sick. And now you're here. She says it's temporary. Robert made a sound that wasn't quite a laugh. They all say that. We walked in silence for another few minutes. Then he said, quiet enough that only I could hear, my son had me declared incompetent. Said I was too old to handle my own finances. Took everything. House, savings, even my car. Put me here and told me it was for my own good. My throat tightened. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry, be smart. He stopped, looked at me directly. You signed something in a hospital, feeling weak and scared, because your daughter told you to trust her. I did the same thing with my son. But here's what I learned. A signature signed under duress, without proper legal counsel, when you're medically compromised, that can be challenged. She's my daughter, I whispered. And that, Robert said, his voice heavy with something that might have been grief, is exactly what she's counting on. The aide was getting impatient, pulling me toward the building, but Robert's words stayed with me, settling into the hollow space Lauren's betrayal had carved out. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the house, about the papers Lauren had made me sign, about the way she'd scheduled my move for a day when her kids, my grandchildren, Ethan and Chloe, were at school. They didn't even get to say goodbye. When I'd asked about seeing them, Lauren had said, "Let's wait until you're settled, Mom. I don't want them to see you like this." Like what? Old, sick, inconvenient? Like someone who'd given everything and was now worth nothing? In the morning, I asked the front desk if I could make a phone call. The receptionist, a different one, younger, with kind eyes, nodded and pushed the phone across the counter. I called Lauren's office, got her secretary. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Miller, but Dr. Miller is with a patient. This is her mother. It's important." A pause. Then, "She asked me to tell you she'll try to visit this weekend." Try. The word landed like a slap. "Can you tell her I need to talk to her about the house?" Another pause. Longer this time. "I'll pass along the message." The weekend came and went. No Lauren. But Emily arrived instead. Emily Rodriguez was a nurse. Mid-30s, tired eyes, quick smile. She wasn't assigned to me specifically, but she seemed to notice things the other staff didn't, like the way I'd stopped eating much at dinner, or how I sat in my room with the lights off, staring at nothing. She knocked on my door one evening, carrying a cup of tea that actually smelled like tea, not the lukewarm dishwater they served in the dining hall. "Thought you might want something real," she said, setting it on my table. "My abuela's recipe, manzanilla with a little honey. You didn't have to do that." "I know." She sat down in the chair across from me, uninvited but somehow not unwelcome. But I wanted to. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Emily said, "Robert told me about your situation." My defenses went up immediately. "He shouldn't have. He cares. So do I." She leaned forward, elbows on her knees. "Mrs. Miller, I've worked in elder care for 12 years. I've seen every kind of family dynamic you can imagine. And I've learned to recognize the difference between someone who's here because they need care and someone who's here because they're being warehoused." The word hit me like cold water. Warehoused. "Has your daughter visited at all since she dropped you off?" I couldn't answer. My silence was answer enough. Emily's expression hardened. "Has she called?" "Her secretary said she's busy. Too busy for her mother." Emily shook her head. "Mrs. Miller, can I ask you something? Did you want to come here?" She said it was temporary. "That's not what I asked." My hands started shaking. I wrapped them around the warm mug, letting the heat ground me. No, I didn't want this. But Lauren said I was confused, that I wasn't thinking clearly because of my heart, and the doctors agreed with her. What doctors? The ones at the hospital. They signed papers saying I wasn't competent to make my own decisions. Emily pulled out her phone, started typing. "Which hospital?" I told her. She typed some more, her frown deepening. Then she looked up at me. "Mrs. Miller, those doctors work at your daughter's hospital. 2 of them are in her department." The room tilted sideways. "She wouldn't," I started, but the words died in my throat. Because of course she would. Lauren, who'd looked me in the eye and called me confused. Lauren, who'd promised to bring photographs and never did. Lauren, who'd taken everything I'd worked for and convinced me it was for my own good. "I think," Emily said carefully, "that you might want to talk to Robert. Really talk to him." So I did. Robert's room was identical to mine. Same beige walls, same narrow window, but he'd made it his own with stacks of books and legal pads covered in cramped handwriting. When I knocked, he opened the door immediately, like he'd been expecting me. "Come in, Grace. I've been hoping you'd show up." He had a folder waiting on his table. Inside were printouts, notes, photocopies of legal statutes I couldn't begin to understand. But Robert walked me through it all with the patience of someone who'd once spent his days doing exactly this for people who needed help. Power of attorney signed in a hospital while you're on medication, without independent legal counsel. That's textbook undue influence, he explained. And if your daughter used that power of attorney to transfer property out of your name without your explicit, informed consent, that's fraud. "She's my daughter," I said again, but this time it sounded hollow even to my own ears. "I know." Robert's voice was gentle. "My son is my son. I love him. I'll probably always love him. But that doesn't mean what he did to me was legal or right, and it doesn't mean I have to let him get away with it." "What did you do?" He smiled, thin and bitter. "I fought back. Got a pro bono lawyer through a legal aid clinic. Judge reversed the incompetency declaration. Ordered my son to return my assets. Took 18 months and almost killed me from stress. But I won. And your son? Hasn't spoken to me since." The smile faded. "But I have my dignity back. I have my rights. And when I die, which, let's face it, won't be that long from now, I'll die knowing I didn't just roll over and let him erase me." I looked down at the papers, at the evidence of Robert's war. "I don't know if I can do this." "Yes, you can." Emily's voice came from the doorway. She was leaning against the frame, arms crossed. "You're stronger than you think, Mrs. Miller. And you're not alone." That was when I started to cry. Not delicate tears, but ugly, wrenching sobs that came from somewhere deep and wounded. Emily moved to my side, her hand on my shoulder. Robert just sat quietly, letting me break apart in his small beige room. When I finally stopped, when the tears dried up and left me hollow and raw, Robert pushed a tissue box across the table. "Here's what we're going to do," he said. "We're going to document everything. Every conversation, every missed visit, every promise your daughter broke. We're going to request copies of those medical evaluations and find out exactly how she got them signed. And then we're going to find you a lawyer who gives a damn." "I don't have money for a lawyer." "Legal aid exists for a reason," Emily said. "And I know someone who might help. My cousin. She's fresh out of law school working at a clinic that handles elder abuse cases." Elder abuse. The words made me flinch. "That's what this is," Robert said, not unkindly. "I know it's hard to hear. I know she's your daughter and you love her, and you paid for her education, and you probably still make excuses for her in your head. But Grace, may I call you Grace?" I nodded. "Grace. She committed fraud. She manipulated you when you were at your most vulnerable. She falsified medical documents, and she's trying to steal your home. That's not a daughter making hard decisions for her mother's benefit. That's a criminal taking advantage of someone who trusted her." I wanted to argue. I wanted to defend Lauren, to explain that she was under pressure, that being a doctor was stressful, that she had her own family to think about. But the excuses wouldn't come. They'd been worn too thin by weeks of silence and broken promises. "Okay," I whispered. "Tell me what to do." Over the next 3 weeks, I became a different person. Or maybe I became myself again, the woman who'd worked double shifts for 15 years, who'd fought off creditors and raised a daughter alone, and never once asked for help because I'd been too proud or too stubborn or too afraid of being a burden. Robert taught me to keep a journal. Every day, I wrote down what happened. When I tried to call Lauren, when the staff mentioned she'd called to check in, but hadn't asked to speak to me, when I overheard the financial administrator mention something about the house sale being almost finalized. Emily gathered evidence from the nursing home records. She found discrepancies in my admission paperwork, dates that didn't match, signatures that looked forged, medical assessments that contradicted each other. She made copies of everything, built a file that grew thicker every day, and Emily's cousin, Maria Rodriguez, came to visit me on a Tuesday afternoon. She was young, maybe 30, with sharp eyes and an energy that made my room feel less suffocating. She listened to my story without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she sat back and let out a long breath. Mrs. Miller, I'm going to be honest with you. This is a strong case, but it's going to be hard. Your daughter is a respected doctor. She'll have expensive lawyers. She'll paint you as a confused old woman who doesn't understand her own best interests. Are you prepared for that? I thought about Lauren as a little girl, climbing into my lap after her father died, asking me if we'd be okay. I'd promised her we would be. I'd kept that promise, no matter what it cost me. And now she'd looked at me, at 78 years old, with a failing heart and empty pockets, and decided I was disposable. Yes, I said. I'm prepared. Maria smiled. Then let's go to war. The process was slower than I'd hoped, and more painful than I'd imagined. Maria filed a petition to invalidate the power of attorney, to freeze the house sale, to order a new medical evaluation by independent doctors. Lauren's lawyers fought back immediately, filing counter motions claiming I was mentally unfit, that I was being manipulated by unscrupulous individuals in the nursing home. They meant Robert and Emily, my only friends in this place, the people who'd given me back my voice. I had to testify, not in court yet, just in a deposition, in a cramped office that smelled like old coffee. Lauren's lawyer was a man in a suit that probably cost more than my monthly medication, and he treated me like I was something stuck to his shoe. Mrs. Miller, isn't it true that you've been experiencing memory problems? No, but you signed a power of attorney. Don't you remember signing it? I remember being in a hospital bed, barely conscious, and my daughter telling me it was just a formality. A formality. He made a note. And isn't it true that you were unable to care for yourself? That you needed assistance with basic daily activities? I needed help with medication management. That's different from being incompetent. Is it? He smiled, and I hated him. Mrs. Miller, your daughter is a doctor. Don't you think she knows better than you what kind of care you need? She's a cardiologist, I said, surprised by how steady my voice was. Not a geriatric specialist. And being a doctor doesn't give her the right to steal my home. His smile faded. That's a serious accusation. It's a serious crime. Maria, sitting beside me, squeezed my hand under the table. The deposition went on for 3 hours. By the end, I was exhausted, my heart doing strange things in my chest that made Emily's warnings about stress echo in my head. But I'd held my ground. I'd told the truth. That night, Lauren called me for the first time in 2 months. Mom. Her voice was tight. I heard about the lawsuit. I closed my eyes, gripping the phone. It's not a lawsuit yet. It's a petition. You're trying to overturn the power of attorney. You're accusing me of fraud. You did commit fraud, Lauren. Silence. Then, I can't believe you're doing this. After everything I've done for you, everything you've done for me. The words came out louder than I'd intended. Down the hall, I heard a door open, then close. I worked 15 years to pay for your education. I gave you everything I had. And when I asked you for 500 pesos, 500, you put me in here and took my house. The house needed to be sold. You couldn't take care of it anymore. That wasn't your decision to make. I'm your daughter! Now she was shouting too. I have power of attorney. I'm legally allowed to make these decisions. You got that power of attorney through fraud. You're senile. You're confused. She stopped abruptly. I could hear her breathing, sharp and angry. Those people are poisoning you against me. Robert, that nurse, they're manipulating you. They're helping me. There's a difference. I'm your family. Then act like it. I hung up. My hand was shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. But I'd done it. I'd stood up to her. For the first time in my entire life, I'd told my daughter no. Robert found me in the courtyard an hour later, sitting on a bench in the dark. I heard, he said, settling down beside me. You okay? I don't know. I stared at the concrete wall that blocked any view of the sky. She sounded so angry, so hurt. Good. I looked at him, startled. His expression was hard. She should be hurt, he said. She should be angry, because she got caught, Grace. She thought you'd just accept it, that you were too old or too scared or too conditioned to obedience to fight back. And now she knows she was wrong. She's my daughter. I know. His voice softened. And that's the hardest part. Because no matter what she did, some part of you will always love her. But loving someone doesn't mean letting them destroy you. We sat in silence for a while. Then Robert said, My son came to see me. After I won my case, he wanted to apologize, to rebuild our relationship. And you know what I realized? He wasn't sorry for what he'd done. He was sorry he'd lost access to my money. Did you forgive him? No. He smiled sadly. But I let him go. And that was better than forgiveness. The court hearing was scheduled for 3 months after we filed the petition. 3 months of waiting, of documentation, of endless legal maneuvering. Maria kept me updated on everything. Every motion Lauren's lawyers filed, every delay tactic, every attempt to paint me as incompetent. But we had something they didn't expect. Evidence. Emily had been busy. She'd found the doctors who'd signed my competency evaluations, and she'd noticed something interesting. All 3 had received consulting fees from Lauren's clinic in the month before my hospitalization. She'd documented it, traced the payments, built a paper trail that Maria said was potentially devastating. Robert had been busy too. He'd reached out to other residents in the nursing home, asked questions, compared stories. Turned out 3 other families had similar situations. Power of attorney signed under questionable circumstances. Assets transferred. Elderly parents warehoused in facilities they'd never agreed to enter. He'd built a network, a support group, a whisper campaign that was starting to get attention from local media. And I'd been busy remembering. I wrote down everything. Every conversation with Lauren about my health. Every time I'd asked about seeing my grandchildren and been told, soon. Every promise she'd made about the house being just temporarily secured for my benefit. I wrote about the day she'd had me sign the power of attorney, how I'd been barely conscious, how she'd held the pen in my hand and guided my signature. I wrote about how much I loved her, how much it hurt. The morning of the hearing, Emily helped me get dressed. I wore the one good outfit I had left, a simple blue dress Lauren had once said made me look dignified. Maria had insisted I look as competent and put together as possible. They're going to try to make you look confused, she'd warned. Frail, unable to understand what's happening. You need to show the judge that you're sharp, that you know exactly what's at stake. Robert rode with me to the courthouse. He'd traded his usual casual clothes for a suit that hung a little loose on his thin frame, but he looked like what he'd been, a lawyer, a fighter, someone who knew these halls and how they worked. Remember, he said as we walked in, the truth is on your side. Hold on to that. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected, less dramatic. No jury, just a judge, a clerk, 2 tables for the lawyers, and a handful of chairs in the back where Emily and Robert sat. Lauren was already there with her legal team, looking polished and professional in a gray suit. When I walked in, she didn't meet my eyes. Maria stood as I approached. You ready? I nodded, not trusting my voice. The hearing began with opening statements. Lauren's lawyer painted a picture of a devoted daughter, making difficult but necessary decisions for her aging mother. He talked about my health problems, my declining cognitive function, my inability to manage my own affairs. He made me sound pitiful. Then Maria stood. Your Honor, this case isn't about whether Mrs. Grace Miller needs support. It's about whether her daughter used her medical credentials and her mother's trust to commit fraud. We will show that Lauren Miller orchestrated a scheme to obtain power of attorney under false pretenses, falsified medical documents, and used her position to pressure doctors into signing evaluations they knew were inaccurate. This isn't about care. It's about theft. The judge looked interested. The next hour was a blur of testimony. Medical experts explaining that my cognitive function was normal for my age. Financial analysts showing the timeline of the house sale. The suspicious speed of the process. The way Lauren had bypassed normal safeguards. Emily testifying about the discrepancies in my admission paperwork. Then Lauren took the stand. She looked confident at first, answering her lawyer's softball questions with practiced ease. Yes, she'd been worried about her mother. Yes, she'd consulted with colleagues about the best course of action. Yes, the power of attorney had been necessary to protect her mother's interests. Then Maria started her cross-examination. Dr. Miller, when did you last visit your mother at the nursing home? Lauren hesitated. It's been difficult to get away from the clinic. How many weeks has it been? I'm not sure exactly. Your mother has been in that facility for 14 weeks. Have you visited her at all during that time? Silence. Dr. Miller, please answer the question. No. Lauren's voice was barely audible. I haven't visited. Have you called her? I called to check on her condition. Did you speak to her directly? No, I spoke to the staff. Maria moved to her table, picked up a document. Your Honor, I'd like to enter into evidence a recording made by Mrs. Miller during a phone conversation with her daughter 3 weeks ago. My heart stopped. I looked at Robert, who gave me a small nod. He'd suggested I record the next time Lauren called, said we might need it. I hadn't known if it was legal, if it would matter, but Maria had assured me that in cases of suspected fraud, such recordings were admissible. The judge nodded. Proceed. The courtroom filled with the sound of Lauren's voice. Tinny, but clear through the speakers. I closed my eyes, not wanting to see her face as she listened to her own words. Can't believe you're doing this. After everything I've done for you, everything you've done for me, I worked 15 years to pay for your education. That was your choice. I never asked you to sacrifice yourself like that. Lauren, I'm your mother. I needed help. I needed 500 pesos for medication, and I gave you a solution. The nursing home takes care of everything. You took my house because you couldn't manage it anymore, because you're old and sick and you need someone to make decisions for you. There was a pause on the recording. Then my voice, quieter. Is that all I am to you now? A burden? And Lauren's response, so cold it made me shiver even now. Mom, you haven't been useful to anyone in years. You paid for my education. Thank you. But that doesn't mean I owe you my entire life. You're 78 years old. You have a failing heart. I'm a doctor. I deal in realities. And the reality is that investing more time and money into someone with no future doesn't make sense. The house sale will cover your care until you die. That's more than most people get. The recording ended. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. I opened my eyes and looked at Lauren. She was staring at the table, her face white. Her lawyer was frantically writing notes, his expression grim. And the judge was looking at Lauren like she was something distasteful he'd found on his shoe. Dr. Miller, the judge said, his voice careful, did you in fact tell your mother that she has no future and doesn't deserve investment? Lauren's hands were shaking. Your Honor, I was upset. I didn't mean... Did you tell her that the house sale would cover her care until she dies? I was trying to explain the practical realities. Did you or did you not fraudulently obtain power of attorney over your mother while she was hospitalized and medically compromised? I was acting in her best interests. That's not what I asked. Lauren looked at her lawyer, who gave a small shake of his head. She looked at me, and for a second, I saw something in her eyes. Fear, maybe, or regret. But it passed quickly, replaced by anger. She's my mother, Lauren said, her voice rising. I have the right to make decisions about her care. Not through fraud, you don't. The judge closed the folder in front of him. I've heard enough. Mrs. Miller, you'll have my decision by end of week. But I could see it in his face. I'd won. The week that followed felt longer than the 3 months of waiting before it. I stayed in my beige room, trying not to hope too hard, trying to prepare myself for disappointment, even though Emily and Robert kept telling me it was over, that the judge's reaction had made it clear. Maria called on Friday afternoon. Grace, we won. Everything. The power of attorney is invalidated, the house sale is reversed, and the judge ordered Lauren to pay damages for fraud and elder abuse. You're going home. I sat down on my bed, the phone pressed to my ear, and I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, just felt something enormous and painful crack open in my chest. Grace, are you there? I'm here, I whispered. I can't believe it. Believe it. You fought back and you won. The house is yours. Your life is yours. That night, Robert opened a bottle of contraband wine he'd been hiding in his room, and the 3 of us, Robert, Emily, and I, sat in the courtyard under the stars and toasted to freedom, to dignity, to the stubborn refusal to be erased. What will you do now? Emily asked. I thought about the house in Coyoacan, about the lemon tree in the yard, about the kitchen where I'd made countless meals for a daughter who'd grown up to see me as a burden. I'm going to live, I said. Really live. Not just exist. Robert raised his glass. To living, Emily and I echoed. Lauren tried to contact me twice in the weeks that followed. The first time was through her lawyer, offering a settlement if I'd agree not to pursue criminal charges. Maria advised me to ignore it, and I did. The second time was a letter, delivered to the nursing home the day before I was scheduled to leave. I almost didn't open it, but curiosity, or maybe some lingering shred of hope, made me break the seal. The letter was short. Mom, I'm sorry you felt you had to take this to court. I was only trying to help. I hope someday you'll understand that everything I did was for your benefit. Lauren. I read it 3 times, looking for something real, an actual apology, a recognition of what she'd done, anything that felt like my daughter was still in there somewhere. But it was just more deflection, more refusal to take responsibility. I tore it up and threw it away. Moving back into the house was surreal. Maria had arranged for a home health aide to check on me twice a week, and Emily, who'd become more than a nurse, more than a friend, had taken vacation days to help me settle in. We cleaned together, opened windows, let fresh air chase away the emptiness. The lemon tree had bloomed while I was gone. The courtyard smelled like citrus and hope. I didn't hear from Lauren for 3 months. Then, on a Sunday afternoon, a car pulled up outside. I watched from the window as Ethan and Chloe climbed out, followed by Lauren. My heart did something complicated, jumped and sank at the same time. I opened the door before they could knock. The kids ran to me immediately, throwing their arms around my waist, talking over each other about school and friends and how much they'd missed me. I held them close, breathing in the scent of their shampoo, feeling how much they'd grown. Lauren stood at the edge of the courtyard, her face unreadable. "Can we talk?" she asked. I looked at her for a long moment. Then I nodded. "Kids, go check on the lemon tree. I bet there's fruit ready to pick." They ran off, delighted. Lauren walked slowly toward me, stopped a few feet away. "I wanted to apologize," she said. "Okay." She flinched at my tone. "Mom, I made mistakes. I was stressed, I was overwhelmed, and I handled things badly. You committed fraud. You tried to steal my home. You put me in a facility and abandoned me. I know." Her voice cracked. "I know, and I'm sorry. I don't know how to fix this, but I want to try. I want you in our lives. The kids miss you." I looked past her at Ethan and Chloe, who were carefully picking lemons and putting them in their shirts, making baskets with the fabric. They looked happy, innocent, unaware of the darkness their mother had revealed. "I love them," I said quietly. "I'll always love them. They can come here anytime they want. But you and I, Lauren, I don't know if we can fix this. Because of the court case? Because you looked at me and saw nothing but a burden? Because when I needed you most, you took everything and walked away?" I met her eyes. "You weren't just stressed. You were cruel, and I can't forget that." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I'm your daughter." "I know, and that's what makes it hurt so much." We stood there in the courtyard, the smell of lemons in the air, the sound of children laughing nearby. Lauren opened her mouth like she wanted to say something else, then closed it. She wiped her eyes, nodded once, and turned to call the kids. They protested, begging to stay longer, and I told them they could come back next Sunday if they wanted. Their faces lit up. Lauren just nodded stiffly and herded them to the car. Before she got in, she looked back at me one more time. I saw pain in her expression, and maybe, finally, shame. I didn't wave. I just watched them drive away. 6 months later, I'm standing in my kitchen making tamales because I want 6 months later. I'm standing in my kitchen making tamales because I want to, not because I have to. Because the house is mine again. Because my life is mine again. Emily stops by every Thursday after her shift. We've developed a routine. She brings coffee from the good cafe near the hospital. I make lunch, and we sit in the courtyard under the lemon tree talking about everything and nothing. She's become the daughter I wish I'd raised, though I'd never say that out loud. It wouldn't be fair to either of them. Robert visits too, when his son allows it. They're trying to rebuild something, though Robert says it feels more like constructing a bridge over a canyon than mending a crack. Some betrayals leave scars too deep to fully heal, but he's trying, and I admire that about him. He's braver than I am. The kids come every other Sunday now. It's a court-mandated arrangement, part of the settlement that came after the criminal investigation into Lauren's fraud. She wasn't charged in the end. The prosecutor said it would be too difficult to prove intent beyond reasonable doubt, and I didn't have the heart to push for it. She's still my daughter, even if I don't know what that means anymore. Ethan is teaching me to use a smartphone. He's patient in that particular way teenagers are when they can't quite believe adults don't understand technology. Chloe helps me in the garden, her small hands gentle with the seedlings we're planting. She wants to grow strawberries. I tell her they'll take time, that she'll need to be patient, and come back every week to water them and check their progress. Like growing up, she says wisely. and I have to look away because she's so much like her grandfather it hurts. Lauren drops them off and picks them up. We don't talk beyond pleasantries. Hi, Mom. Hello, Lauren. I'll have them back by 6. That's fine. Sometimes I see her sitting in the car at the curb, watching the house, but she never comes in. I haven't invited her, and she hasn't asked. Maria stops by once a month to check on me, though she's not my lawyer anymore. She's my friend. She brought her abuela to meet me last week, a tiny woman with fierce eyes who declared I had warrior spirit and gave me a bracelet woven from red thread for protection. I wear it every day. The house feels different now, not sad or empty like it did after my husband died, and not violated like it did when Lauren tried to take it from me. It feels like mine. I've painted the kitchen yellow. I've planted herbs in pots along the windowsill. I've hung photographs, not of Lauren, but of my husband, of the kids, of Emily and Robert and Maria, my chosen family, the people who saw me when I was invisible. My heart is still failing. That hasn't changed. Dr. Chen, my new cardiologist, someone who has no connection to Lauren, says I probably have a few good years left if I'm careful. Maybe 5. Maybe less. I take my medication every day, the pills I can now afford because the settlement money and the reversal of the house sale means I'm not choosing between eating and living. I don't think about death the way I used to. When Lauren put me in that nursing home, death felt like a mercy, an escape from the humiliation of being warehoused and forgotten. Now it feels like an interruption to a life I'm finally living on my own terms. Yesterday, I went to the market alone for the first time in a year. My legs aren't what they were, and I had to stop twice to rest. But I made it. I bought fresh tomatoes and cilantro and chilies. I talked to the vendors who've known me for decades, who asked where I'd been and seemed genuinely happy to see me back. One of them, Senora Martinez, grabbed my hand and said, "We heard what your daughter did. I'm sorry." I squeezed her hand back. "I survived. More than survived," she said, looking at me with something like pride. "You fought back." Tonight, I'm having dinner with Robert and Emily. Just the 3 of us, in my kitchen, at my table. Emily is bringing wine. Robert is bringing stories. He's always bringing stories, usually about the absurdity of legal bureaucracy or the particular indignities of aging. I'm making the tamales because I'm good at it, and because there's something healing about working with my hands, about creating something warm and nourishing from simple ingredients. The lemon tree outside the window is heavy with fruit. I'll send some home with my guests. I always do. As I fold the corn husks around the masa, I think about Lauren. I still love her. That's the terrible, complicated truth. I'm angry at her. I may never forgive her. But I love her because she's my daughter. Because I remember the little girl who climbed into my lap and asked if we'd be okay. Because somewhere under the doctor's coat and the cold calculations, there might still be a piece of that child. But I also know now that loving someone doesn't mean letting them destroy you. Robert taught me that. Emily showed me it was possible to survive it. Maria gave me the tools to fight back. And I taught myself, slowly, painfully, that at 78 years old, with a failing heart and a lifetime of sacrifices behind me, I still have value. I still matter. I still deserve to live with dignity, in my own home, on my own terms. The doorbell rings. Emily's voice calls out, "Grace, I brought the good wine." Robert's voice follows, "And I brought cheese. The expensive kind you pretend you don't like." I smile, wiping my hands on my apron. Through the window, I can see the lemon tree swaying gently in the evening breeze, its fruit golden in the fading light. I'm 78 years old. My heart is failing. My daughter betrayed me. I spent 3 months in a beige room believing I'd been discarded like trash, but I'm standing in my kitchen, in my house, with my friends on the way and tamales steaming on the stove, and I'm alive. Really, truly alive. "Coming," I call out, and walk toward the door to let them in.